Today, we are doing the Systems Alliance, the unified government and military of mankind, as well as the representatives of humanity's interests across the stars. They are also the single best faction for doling out justice, since the Alliance curb stomps the Batarians into the dirt every chance they get. And if that's not just pure justice, I don't know what is. Those fugly freaks trying to muscle in on mankind's territory. In fact, comparing the two to each other is almost unfair. It's like coughing baby versus nuclear bomb. Dude, despite being a brand new addition to the galactic stage, the Alliance is kicking the shit out of basically everyone around them. All the pirates, slavers, and wannabe warlord empires. Just wipe them all out. Gone. No mercy. And they've continued to advance like that across the stars for quite a while, so they're pretty fantastic. But today we'll be covering the history of them, how they came about, how they're organized, and what role they play in human politics. And of course we'll be talking about their military, both the structure of it and how many mass driver slugs they can slam into someone's forehead. We'll also be talking about a couple really significant events in their history, such as the Skyllian Blitz and the Scouring of Torfin. But before we actually get into things, introductions finally, like 10 minutes into the video, generic greetings and welcome to Science Insanity, a channel dedicated to bringing my love of sci-fi to all of you. Along for the ride is my co-host and science-illiterate friend Steve, who is actually playing through the Mass Effect games right now and actually enjoying them. Say hello, Steve.
Hello. I thoroughly did not enjoy the Mako, and I would like to go Udina. That's all I have so far.
Don't worry, those two opinions have already embedded you well into the Mass Effect fandom. Udina being awful and the Mako being just the worst vehicle ever.
Well, it's somehow worse to drive on mouse keyboard than a Warthog is. Makes zero sense.
It's a giant foam car that just bounces around the environment like mad and you can't control it. So, with that out of the way, on to the video. And let's start with the history of the Alliance. This is hopefully going to be fast, and when I say fast, like probably 15 minutes, because early history is pretty bare bones, but as we get closer and closer to the actual start of the trilogy, we get a lot more information. Up until the late 2140s, mankind was just as disunited and squabbling as we are in real life, various nations and political alliances dominating the culture and political landscape of Earth, as well as the solar system beyond. However, expeditions across Mars uncovered a strange signal in the South Pole, centered in a region that had become famous as the Bermuda Triangle of Mars for a number of accidents, issues, and strange occurrences that just keep happening there for some reason. As it turns out, it was alien shenanigans, as a massive and extremely old alien research station was discovered buried on Mars. This discovery sent mankind reeling. Overnight, everything was called into question. Religious upheaval and schism happened over the news, governments that had been at the edge of war were now discussing reconciliation, and numerous small-scale conflicts broke out across Earth as tensions flared. While social and cultural strife was playing out across Earth, the various governmental bodies did what they do best. Endless talking about things rather than taking action. And in this case, it actually proved to be a good idea, as the roughly 24-ish most powerful and influential nations on Earth got together and essentially converted the UN into the Systems Alliance, founding it officially at the turn of the decade. The Systems Alliance would be placed in a governing position over all orbital and exoplanetary resources. This was to ensure that the various national holdings could all be coordinated and work together if a worst-case scenario happened. That worst-case scenario being angry murder hobo aliens showing up and killing people, as they tend to do in basically all science fiction. Beholden to the various governments that founded it, the Alliance immediately set about its mandate of exploring, expanding, and developing as much space as possible to buy Earth time, resources, and wealth to protect itself. With the discovery of a Mass Effect relay on the edge of the solar system, the Alliance quickly began expanding out across the stars. It's also important to mention, while the Alliance is extremely powerful at this point, having control of essentially everything off Earth and control of the only purpose-built warships mankind has, it's still subservient to Earth and the UN, or whatever version this fictional universe has of it. Its change into the de facto government of mankind happens slow. For the next few decades, the Alliance expanded like locusts, and I mean really, like I'm not exaggerating here. This is arguably one of the single greatest land grabs ever. Dozens of self-sufficient colonies were established across as many star systems, with hundreds of outposts, stations, and transport hubs, all dedicated to extracting as much as they could from every system they found. They basically swarmed over every new solar system and planted their flag on every moon, planet, and asteroid they could find.
As they should.
Well, I mean, there was nobody else here, and just in case they were accidentally colonizing someone else's territory, shocker, they were. Possession is 9/10 of ownership, so, you know, as long as they had the flag and the people there, it was their stuff.
Exactly.
The Batarians would disagree, but nobody cares about them, so it's fine.
See Falkland Islands.
By this point, the Alliance also possessed a very impressive fleet of several hundred ships. Only a few dozen capital-class ships or dreadnoughts, though. The defining moment for the Alliance and the start of its shift towards a true governing position for humanity was the First Contact War. While exploring, a small flotilla of engineering and exploration ships were attempting to activate a mass relay when they were attacked by unknown vessels of alien design. These were the Turians. I'm assuming you know them well.
Yes.
The hyper-martial militarists of the setting, sort of.
Garrus.
Garrus is everyone loves Garrus, fan favorite. Unfortunately, the Turians are absolutely brain damaged. Like, they had a point in engaging. You know, activating dormant mass relays is a massive taboo in council space. Since the last time someone did that, the Rachni ended up pouring through in an attempt to eat the rest of the universe. Asari burgers are back on the menu, boys, spoken in unintelligible clicks, screeching and chittering. The Turians, though, despite all of that and all of the very justified reasons they had for stopping mankind, they just decided that being reasonable was a stupid idea and attacked the humans out of nowhere, destroying all but one of the ships that were there, which escaped back to a nearby human colony. Here's the thing. I've seen a lot of people that try to argue that the First Contact War is like a series of miscommunications or it was just flare-ups and tensions on both sides, but it's like, no. The Turians are just morons.
There would have to be communications for there to be miscommunication.
They had every possible opportunity to try and talk with the humans. The number one priority for the Alliance was expanding to try and figure out if they were still alone in the universe or if there were other aliens. And like this was the most important discovery that humanity had, like full stop, other alien life. And what did the Turians do? They opened fire. Congratulations, Turians, you single-handedly confirmed every fear that humanity had and completely justified all the racists and human supremacists because the first aliens they meet tried to kill them. What an amazing start to your diplomatic relationship.
I don't see how it could have gone better, honestly.
Oh, it gets worse. It gets so much worse, as all things with the Turians do. After they had destroyed these ships, the one that escaped ran back to a nearby colony. And you would think, as an intelligent being, okay, we just killed all of them, one of them escaped, they're probably going to tell whatever world they get to that we're hostile. So if we follow them, they're probably going to respond with hostility. And what do the Turians do? They just go YOLOing after the ship that escaped and find the colony. Because they're arrogant pricks, they assume that the entire colony is like humanity's homeworld, and then they get really angry when the security forces move to engage them, blow up all of those ships, and then invade the planet and start killing people willy-nilly in the colony. Straight up, the First Contact War is 100% justified to the Alliance. They are the victims of random, pointless aggression. The Turians are morons, and they kept escalating the situation farther and farther. And then, when the Alliance actually responded with a giant battle fleet, they obliterated all the Turians in orbit and completely routed them on the ground. And then the Turian hierarchy has the audacity to be upset about that. They actually get angry. How dare these random aliens blow up our ships that were nuking their planets? How dare they fight back to defend themselves? It's literally a Russia and Ukraine situation. How dare you punch me back after I attacked you? It's such a load of shit.
Average alien moment.
The best justification I've seen for it is that the Turians have the worst kind of incompetence, which is they just have no cultural mindset outside of warfare, that they have the biggest hammer in the galaxy, the biggest military, and every problem looks like a nail, so they can only respond to things like that.
That Turian counselor really making me hard to believe that right now.
Well, to be fair, the Turian counselor doesn't really do much across the 3 games, except stop you from doing things not believe you and then advocate for violence.
I've noticed that. I also, can we talk about how big of a downgrade it was between 1 and 2? Because they're all the counselors are named in 1, and then in 2 it just says Turian counselor, Asari counselor instead of Sparatus or whatever the fuck his name is. Then
Did you let the council die in the first game?
no.
Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't know that. That is a huge downgrade. Man is so incompetent, he literally lost his name.
They all did.
Look, okay. The more you dig into Mass Effect, the more you're going to start to hate all of the other races because they're all so blindingly incompetent in their own uniquely awful ways. Like, the only faction that you can consistently look at and be like, they actually know what they're doing is Mankind. Mankind has their own problems, but, like, just the Asari and the Turians, and they're so incompetent. They're so bad at just everything. It makes your head spin.
Oh, can we try to avoid spoilers for the second game as much as possible, please? I would like to be surprised to find out if Cerberus is good or not. If this is possible. If not, I mean,
we weren't going to talk about Cerberus. Only very.
Well, I figured they would be somewhat connected with the Alliance, so if we're not going to talk about them at all,
I mean, for like the entire history of Mass Effect, the Cerberus was like a terrorist organization, and they weren't really significant until Mass Effect 2, and then later on in Mass Effect 3. So they don't really do anything until a lot later in the series.
Until they revive you. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can get the entire Cerberus part out of the way now, which is...
Nope, let's, mandatory part.
Yeah, just like very basic backstory. Like, where did they come from? Well, there are a lot of human supremacists and racists that don't like the Turians, and they think that the Alliance is too soft and not being aggressive enough. So they go off to go do terrorist things against aliens, and their support base is all the people that suffered, like, deaths of loved ones and stuff during the First Contact War or against the Batarians later on, and they gradually grow larger as more and more issues crop up with the Council and the galactic community. Aside from that, like, there's not much else to say early on. There's, like, the Elusive Man, but I can't really discuss him because he doesn't have a backstory, like...
Seems kind of elusive.
Anyways, though, getting back on track... This is the moment that the Alliance really started transitioning to its own independent authority, because all of the governments on Earth, after learning of the attack, they didn't do anything. They were at pure gridlock trying to figure out what was going on, panicking, debating what they should or shouldn't do, and the Alliance Admiralty just went, nah, I'm not asking for mission. We're just gonna go do it. And then they slammed the entirety of a fleet into the Turian forces and nearly escalated into a full-scale war. But luckily, since the escalation happened so fast, the rest of the council actually had to take notice and stepped in to start negotiations, once again, with the Alliance. So this gave them a huge boost back home as the actual competent defenders of mankind, negotiating with aliens and being the driving force of human representation in the setting. This was a massive watershed moment because the public perspective on it changed as well. The Alliance had been sucking up an enormous amount of resources from humanity up till this point, and a lot of people were grumbling that it wasn't worth it, or that they didn't need to, or that it was pointless because they didn't even know if aliens were out there. And as it turns out, the Alliance was vindicated. They also handled the situation with about as much subtlety as them running onto the screen and screaming, "You fucked around, now prepare to find out," to the Turians. There was a lot of ooh-rah, rally around the flag spirit there as well. It was also at this point that the Alliance stopped basing around the solar system because it was just no longer feasible, as it took too much time to get around and react to various threats across human territory. So the Alliance set about creating Arcturus Station, a massive ring 5 kilometers across that served as the new capital of the system's alliance. A hybrid shipyard, command hub, and industrial center, Arcturus Station was placed in the best possible spot in the mass relay network so that Alliance fleet was never more than a jump or two away from any of humanity's holdings or colonies. The Alliance transitioning to full leadership of mankind came later, however, when the Batarians got too big for their slave empire having fugly-ass face-looking up-jumped pirate trash barge pilot in britches.
Yo guys, I don't think Sai likes the Batarians. I'm not entirely sure though.
I do not. They are the only race that it is canonically okay to hate, and killing hundreds of thousands of them is a mild inconvenience worthy of paid vacation for a few weeks to keep you out of the public eye. They deserved that Mass Effect. They deserved that mass relay blowing up. I don't care if it was meant to stop the Reapers. The real boon was wiping out as many of those four-eyed freaks as possible.
You mean the Kraken?
What?
I messaged you this yesterday. I will now only be calling the Reapers the Kraken because that's what they look like. So.
Oh, yeah, the, like, cuttlefish-looking squid thing. I always thought they looked like a giant hand, almost.
It does kind of, but I think there's too many tentacles, if you want to call them that. Appendages.
They're a little too squiggly, too many wiggly things on them to really be a hand, but whatever. In the coming years, mankind integrated relatively quickly with the rest of the galactic community, but rather unkindly, at least in perspective for the various other Citadel species. Their rapid ascent to a regional power player didn't sit right with many, and the hostility and prejudice of the First Contact War were very much still alive and thriving. So the Turians were the bad guys, obviously, but generally what the rest of the community saw, because the Turians were the galaxy's policemen, was this random, highly militarized upstart coming out of nowhere, blowing up a bunch of Turian ships, and then being slapped on the wrist gently by the Citadel Council as diplomacy and talks were opened. The humans also received a bit of, how do I describe this? Political favoritism, because, oh god, they have a lot of fucking ships. Jesus Christ. And that was generally the feeling that the galactic community had. Because as it turns out, in the scant few years between kind of becoming a military power and where the games start off, the Alliance went from several hundred ships to several thousand, an order of magnitude more vessels, and lots of very large dreadnoughts and very capable cruisers and frigates supplementing the fleet.
Pretty easy when they're all the same exact ship. You just gotta scale it up a little bit.
Okay, you've made that joke like 5 times. You want to get it out of your system? You want to just rant
I
about
have
it again?
done it. I have done. I just started. I haven't said anything since. Oh my god.
I'm done with your biases against.
I'm being persecuted here. You're gonna get the bagpipes again. Be careful.
What? You can't do that. The meme is only for the BattleTech mech by the funny name. You can't just randomly blast bagpipes
what
at
name?
me.
Sorry, I couldn't.
I don't remember what the name is. So I guess we'll just move on. We'll just move on. So this massive fleet gave humanity a lot of leverage in the opening discussions and politicking and stuff, because as it turns out, they were also positioned in the perfect place in the galaxy that they could start policing the area around the Skyllian Verge and the Attican Traverse and all of that stuff. So generally the most pirate-infested areas surrounded human space, and the Council was like, well, we don't really want to make an enemy of mankind, and they could be really, really useful for keeping a bunch of the pirates and slavers in check. So we're going to treat them well, not get on their bad side, and kind of show them favoritism, which did not earn mankind any favors with the rest of the galaxy and the galactic community, especially like the Volus and the Elcor and stuff, do not like mankind. The Asari are a little bit more ambivalent, but blue woman bad. They'll have their own video ranting about them and how awful they are.
It's a shame that original rant got lost to the void.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the Batarian and human relations, especially about the Skyllian Verge. Do you know what that area is? There's a lot of lore in it in the first game. It fuels a lot of the tensions when you're fighting like mercenaries and stuff. A lot of them are Batarians. Do you know anything about it?
If I'm being honest, I didn't even know Batarians were in the first game. That's how little I expanded, went around and looked for lore.
Okay, fair enough. So, long story short, the Skyllian Verge is a relatively large area of space between recognized Alliance territory and Batarian hegemony territory. The Batarians have claimed that region of space, including a lot of Alliance systems, for like 150, 200, 300 years before this, a long-ass time, but they never really got off their ass to go do anything about it or colonize it. So humanity moved in, went, your claim sucks, and then just immediately started colonizing everything. And this started a relatively fast, not exactly like arms race, but like a scramble for Africa kind of thing, where both factions were just ravenous and ruthless in the way that they were colonizing space. The Batarians, for their part, deployed an enormous number of pirates and raiders to harass the area that had definitely no ties to the Batarian elite or government. They totally weren't funded and or supplied by the main hegemony. Those are purely just rumors. The Alliance just stampeded their giant fuck-off fleet into the Skyllian Verge and basically went, okay, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. There was a bit of asymmetry there between what both sides decided to do over the matter. Some of these raids, however, were becoming a problem for the Alliance. They were targeting new colonies, destroying ships, stealing equipment, and generally making it very difficult to operate in the region. And so the Alliance responded with a massive purge. And when I say that, I mean, like, they ran their fleet in there, like I said, but they basically spent months, if not years, running down every pirate they found. In one operation, they staked out a mass relay and multiple jump points for like 6 months, categorizing every single signature that they saw that wasn't Alliance. And then once they had compiled everything, they launched like 8 massive raids against all of these different pirate strongholds and wiped them all out. That section, like that cluster of planets, never suffered pirate attacks in the region again. And that was generally how the Alliance handled things. If they caught you, they would generally treat you like a pirate. So, you know, if you surrender, you're going to jail kind of thing. But if you fought back, they would just completely kill everything. And this eventually... So the Batarians launched something called the Skyllian Blitz. Do you want to take a wild guess what this is?
Was it a blitz? A offensive blitz through the Skyllian area of the of space?
Yes, you're very close. It was actually a little more specific. That was a wonderfully stuttering guess, Steve. So the colony of Elysium came under attack in 2176. The Skyllian Blitz was essentially the Batarians gathering a whole bunch of their mercenaries and pirates, most of what they had left, and trying to storm this colony. Not just raiding it, not just attacking it, but actually wiping it out. When they got there, they met relatively low resistance until they landed on the planet. Because as it turns out, a small number of Marines and a few soldiers were on leave on this colony. And, coupled with the fact that they armed the rest of the colonists and organized them, they managed to completely stall the ground forces, while in orbit, a reactionary Alliance fleet completely obliterated their ships. Over the coming days, they hunted down every single Batarian that was on the world and killed them all. However, this assault had killed thousands, and so the Alliance responded in kind, with the Scouring of Torfin. They traced where the Batarians came from back to the moon of Torfin, obviously, and they found a massive stronghold built deep into the ground. In retaliation for the Skyllian Blitz, the Systems Alliance pointed one of those big dreadnoughts straight at the planet and started firing their mass accelerator at the fortress.
So anyway, I started blasting.
However, after cracking it open, they wanted to actually raid it, not just destroy everything, because they didn't want to risk killing everyone that was in there, at least not without doing it personally. And so they launched a massive ground campaign. An interesting thing is part of your background as a character is, I think if you pick the Ruthless backstory or like trait as part of your background, you're one of the people that was leading the assault, or one of the leaders of one of the ground teams. You killed all the pirates, swept across the entire base, and even when hordes of the pirates surrendered, you just lined them up and killed them all. Yeah, a bit of a war crime there, but again, they're the Batarians, nobody really cares. The general reaction of the rest of the galactic community was, they deserved it.
I need to go change my background.
Yeah, you can play as a war criminal.
Well, you see, it's technically not a crime since you operate above the law.
It's not a crime if the government made it legal first.
Exactly.
Generally, though, these actions are what cemented the Alliance as the de facto government of mankind, considering that, well, they monopolize all orbital and space assets outside of Earth and Mars, but They also proved themselves to be quick reacting, well and consistent to threats and issues and stuff, and they were also acting with a level of autonomy by this point that even if the governments of Earth tried to assert their control over the Alliance, I don't think it would have worked. They basically morphed into their own unique governmental body by this point. So on paper, they're still subservient to the colonies and stuff that they serve and the other governments that created the Alliance, but like they're not really beholden to it, you know? It's kind of like the military has a state, not the state having a military kind of situation that's going on. And the main driver of a lot of this, the main backbone of a lot of the Alliance's political power and ability to expand, is their military. So finally, the longest part of the video is over. Are you ready to talk about some of their military forces and what they can do?
Well, you already told me I can't talk about like half of the military forces, so...
No, I said you can't talk shit about the ships because you've done that enough already.
But they only got like 2 minutes of me ranting about the ship design. They didn't get the full 10.
All right, fine. Go off then. Do your thing.
No. I reserve the right to butt in at any time about it, though.
Let's start with the Alliance's composition. So, unfortunately, because the Turians are cowards and don't like having competition, they generally forced the Alliance to sign a naval arms treaty, stopping them from producing a lot of the bigger dreadnoughts and making sure that they couldn't really compete with the Turians. However, the Alliance had a relatively interesting solution to this problem, mainly aircraft carriers, or starfighter carriers, whatever you want to call them. Essentially, the Alliance Navy is a vastly different beast than a lot of the other Council races. The general stagnant state of affairs is that you have a whole bunch of big dreadnoughts that form the backbone of your military. They're supported by multiple cruisers, which form a relatively similar level of punching power, but are much faster, much more vulnerable, and much more flexible. Those cruisers are then supported by wolf packs of destroyers and frigates, smaller vessels that screen fighters, missiles, and torpedoes, as well as adding exploitation to the fleet's capabilities. So if the cruiser or a dreadnought opens a hole in the enemy line by obliterating another poor ship, those smaller vessels can rush in to engage in closer range fighting or try to exploit that weakness in the battle line. Alliance fleets are also extremely maneuverable and mobile. Unlike a lot of the other factions, for example, the Asari or the Turians that rely on forehead to problem levels of problem solving, just smash the problem with the hammer until it dies, the Alliance fleet generally follows the idea of if you defend everything, you defend nothing. So they're very mobile, they move around very frequently, they skirmish and harass the enemies rather than committing to all-out, straight-up decisive engagements. And this has meant that in many of the wars that they've fought, the relatively small one. They haven't fought like any major wars, but the small conflicts that they've fought, the Alliance generally inflicts disproportionate levels of damage on their enemy while trading their very large space for time. So they use the vast expanse of their territory to slow enemies down and draw them out, harassing them, annoying them, whittling down their forces, and then committing to a final engagement where they can bring overwhelming force to bear. The Turians, even though they don't like the humans, do begrudgingly admit that they're very good at fighting and that the Alliance is not to be underestimated. They've proven themselves to be pretty damn good. However, when it comes to the actual composition, they generally focus on small-scale ships. Since they were capped on their production of dreadnoughts, they went harder into cruisers and destroyers. So what you end up having is battle fleets that are meant to patrol a sector of space or an area around a relay, and you'll have one mainline cruiser that's kind of hanging around to be the heavy firepower and the main support, and you'll have a large number of destroyers that fan out from this. It's extremely common to see these types of patrols basically everywhere in Alliance space. They're very tightly controlled, very well policed. The actual battle fleets, the ones that have the heavy cruisers and the dreadnoughts and the carriers, those are kept in very large battle groups stationed at key points around mass relays or space stations, able to quickly react and jump to a variety of different areas. For example, you've got the 1st through 8th Fleet, each one stationed in different areas. The First Fleet is the largest in the Alliance Navy and is based at Arcturus Station. This one is basically responsible for guarding all of the core planets and systems of the Alliance, including the solar system, Earth, all of that, Arcturus Station itself, and all of the mainline colonies in Alliance space proper. The Second Fleet, generally the one that was the farthest towards the Council space, is the one that participated in the First Contact War. They were the ones that smashed the Turians.
Wait, so the one at Arcturus was the one that came in at the end of 1, though?
If I remember correctly, yes, because most of the other fleets are tied up either patrolling the border, keeping the Batarians in their place, or protecting from various other threats. The Second Fleet generally is responsible for border patrol, and the most of the heavy stuff that the First Fleet had. Also, it wasn't just the First Fleet, it was like the First, Second, and Third, I think.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah, the Alliance brought like 3 battle fleets to the Citadel. They brought a shitload of force, which is why they ended up winning.
All got diffed.
No, most of them survived. I think it was the equivalent of like a third of their combat power was destroyed fighting the Geth and the Reaper, but
it seemed like a lot more than that was just floating around in the space there. But
I'm kind of drawing on Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect 3 tells us how many casualties they suffered, and it was like about a third. So they've got these different fleet organizations that are set up to rapidly respond to any different area. And while the main fleets are just anchored in one pivotal transport hub, those smaller fleets of cruisers and destroyers actually go out to patrol and stuff. Now, an interesting thing, though, is going back to the Naval Arms Treaty that the Turians forced the Alliance to sign, they had a really funny way around this. Because the Turians wanted to stop the humans from mass-producing their dreadnoughts. They just copy-pasted the design and then printed like 1 million of them, because the Alliance went from several hundred to several thousand ships overnight. And the Turians were not happy about this. They were, in fact, rather frightened and upset about such a potential upset in the balance of power. So, they put a cap on it. But what does the Alliance do? They go, ha, lol. Naval arms treaties, am I right? You specified dreadnoughts. Shouldn't have done that. You should have specified ships over a certain tonnage. Because what the Alliance did is they started building even bigger ships than dreadnoughts, but they just didn't mount the mass accelerators on them. Instead, they put colossal fighter bays all across them and increased their command systems as like a command and control hub. These ships had an enormous amount of firepower through their swarms of anti-capital fighters, carrying disruptor torpedoes and missiles that could seriously mess with the shields and mass effect barriers of enemy ships. These things were a huge force amplifier, and as it turns out, while most of the other species did have carriers, none of them had ever built ones this big. They just assumed that the dreadnought was forever going to be the mainline weapon of war. So even though the Turians tried to stop the Alliance from building a lot more of these big capital ships, in reality, they just pivoted towards different styles of warfare, which again gel very well with how the Alliance works, because a single carrier can basically lock down an entire solar system. They can send fighters and bombers out to the edges of it and stop in huge hordes as well, and stop anybody from operating there. They're a very, very good ship for the Alliance. But for the most part, the Alliance is relatively unliked, but generally seen as useful and a powerful enough addition to the galactic community that you can't really get rid of them, or at least the cost of doing so is absolutely not worth it. And that sums up the majority of the video. I don't know what else there really is to say on it. We could go into the Admiralty and stuff, but I don't know if anybody really cares about discussing the 15 different ranks they have for naval officers, so... And that's that. Anything else you want to add before we end off the video, Steve?
No.
Nothing? You don't want to rant? No?
No. We'll save the rant. We'll save it.
All right, and that pretty much brings us to the end of the video. So if you made it this far, you're clearly the target audience, and or you've enjoyed what we've talked about, or my banter with Steve. So why not leave a like, subscribe, comment down below, ring the bell so you'll be notified of future uploads, and you'll get to see and go check out some of our other content. You might find stuff you enjoy. Every little bit helps the channel out and is greatly appreciated, especially because I want to try to hit 40K by October. That would be an amazing milestone to celebrate Orktober and introduce Steve to the final boss of science fiction at the same time. If you're feeling more generous, we also have a Patreon where you can throw a few bucks towards my Staying Alive fund or feeding Steve to make sure he's around and obedient for all of these videos. Or if you just want to hang out, we've got a Discord where you can meet and talk with fellow Turbo Nerds, share your hobbies and stuff, and I stream on the weekends, maybe sometimes during the weekdays, now that I've got a new computer, and many more games are open to enjoy. To all the people already supporting the channel, a huge thanks to the arms dealers, providing all of the toys and tools you see in the video for us to get some hands-on experience. Steve may think all of the Alliance frigates look the same, I think they all look fantastic. To the food merchants, making sure that Steve is well fed and docile, a huge thanks to you guys as well, and to the coffee vendors. To all the coffee vendors fueling my war on sleep, a huge thanks to you guys as well. One day I shall never sleep again and have a full 24/7 productivity cycle. Thank you all very much for your support, and a special thanks to the new guys, Cody M. Mott and Shade. And with that, the video is functionally over. I have no idea what to say. Outros are hard. Goodbye.